Mr. Dubin, the defense may inquire at this time.
Thank you. May it please the court. Folks, I'm all for a laugh. I spoke to many of you in the back, and I know that sometimes levity can break up a serious moment. But make no mistake, this is the serious of matters. There's no dispute about the fact that a man quite brutally lost his life. So I don't mean to alienate any of you or make you feel bad, but to this man, this is no laughing matter. And I'm not here to talk to you about powdered sugar on the faces or phony liquor store robberies. This man has pled not guilty. And with that plea, he's saying, I didn't do it. And stands here accused of a crime that he did not commit. So I would ask you all to please hit the reset button. And let's be mindful of what is at stake here. And I know from speaking to each and every one of you that you are. The one thing that has become so clear and that I've been so personally impressed by, my colleagues have, is how brutally honest each of you have been. It is not easy sitting in a room full of strangers that are poking and prodding and asking you questions, certainly those that are of a personal nature. I want to apologize in advance, and I want to tell each and every one of you that if I ask you anything that makes you even feel remotely uncomfortable, please, I extend this olive branch to you that with the court's indulgence, you can be heard in private. And if I say something that makes you uncomfortable and you don't take me up on the offer to be heard in private, accept my apology in advance. I'm just doing my job. As I said, I hope you can appreciate what's at stake here for Mr. Adelson. Is that fair? Okay. One thing we do agree on is that there is certainly bias can be a dirty four-letter word. We have violent agreement, if you will, on that. Certainly if it's about somebody's sexual preference, religious preference, ethnicity, religion, those are dirty, ugly biases. But we all have other biases, our value beliefs, our life experiences, the lens through which we've seen the world all forms the basis of how we're going to decide a set of facts. There are no wrong answers here. If you feel a certain way, and some of you have shared that about your faith, about prior experiences, please say it. Please say it. You heard the expression, if you see something, say something. Please say something. Nothing could be more important than you speaking up now. So with that being said, what is it? Somebody mentioned that they worked out. A couple of people were talking about the gyms they worked out. Planet Fitness has that logo, judgment-free zone. This is a judgment-free zone. Don't give me an answer just because you think I want it, or because you think His Honor or anyone else wants it. Okay? Is that fair? Now, there are some people, and this is perfectly acceptable, there are some people that look at someone in Mr. Adelson's position, charged with perhaps the most serious crimes in our penal code, and say, you know what? Must have done something. Got to be here for a reason. And I think that most people that have been accused, arrested, especially of something that happened 9 years ago, they must be guilty, or more likely guilty. If you feel that way, that is fine. So I'm going to ask you, as I've asked many of you over the past day and a half, to please think about it for a moment and search yourself. With the court's permission, I'm going to ask Mr. Adelston to stand.
You may stand, sir.
Please take a good look at it. And if there's any part of you that looks at him and says, you know what? If I'm being honest with myself, because he's been arrested, charged, other people may have been involved, and he may have known them, that he must be guilty, or I lean toward guilt. You can sit, Charlie. Please, tell me if that's how you feel, even if it's a little bit that you're leaning that way. Dr. Rubino, do you feel that way at all? Oh, I thought thought you were going to say something. Mr. Gosling, do you feel that way, even a little bit? All right. So if I could say it with stronger words, I would figure out a way to do it justice. I cannot thank you enough for having the candor that you just did in a room full of strangers. Thank you. So that's perfectly fine. Can you please tell me why you feel that way? Okay, and he's not going to be offended, and his feelings aren't going to be hurt. He wants this sort of honesty. So I appreciate your candor. Is it fair to say then, Mr. Gosling, that he starts out in your mind, you're leaning more toward guilt because he's here? Isn't that fair? All right, I appreciate your candor. Who agrees with Mr. Gosling? Even if you agree just a little bit. And that's perfectly acceptable, and I again, I thank you for your ability to be forthcoming about that and other matters, Mr. Weaver. Can't thank you enough. I appreciate it. Please, this is probably one of the more important questions I'm going to ask. Thank you. Thank you so much. Is it Ms. Williams? All right. So okay, fair enough. If you know me even a little bit, you know I'm gonna ask you some more questions about that. And just tell me the best you can to put words to that feeling. Please tell me what it is, Ms. Williams. Okay. Understood. Is that almost hand raised or just moving your hand?
I disagree with a lot of people, because of my personal experience. When I was a police officer, when I was 24, 25, 26, all the days, you know, with that rapid chance to drive mentality. And I really went around in my head thinking, and all of my friends thought, something must have got you here. Until the day that I was accused of something I didn't do. And I wound up with quote unquote guns pointed at me, being prosecutors looking at me, and internal affairs looking at me. And it's the most horrible feeling in the world. And it destroyed my life. You could go down my line of friends, and as you walk down the line, see people jump on this side or that side. People that decided, you know what, you must be dead. People, some of them good friends, well, I thought were good friends. Some people that were just kind of not such good friends, just people I knew at work, where people put their arm around me and said, I'm on your side. But getting back to the point,
No, you can keep going.
I
You,
changed my mentality completely about, you must have done something that got you in that seat. And honestly, for a long time, I was like, okay, now I'm on the other side. Now I don't need the police, I don't need the prosecutor. But that was back in 1996, 97. And now as a person that's just a little wiser, I'm looking for what the proof is, what the facts are. And I went from being, yeah, you must have done something wrong, and you wouldn't do it. No, I don't feel it anymore.
no, I can't thank you all enough. Having done this for a while, just to be able to have this kind of report, this honest report is it's really the way the system should work. I'm gonna go down the line. It's such a critical question, and we have 4 of you who have shared your views on it. So I'm gonna ask you all again. I'm gonna stick with Mr. Goslin and to some extent Mr. Weaver's point of view. Who else feels like, if you really search yourselves, sorry, I'm a wanderer, but I need to stay at the lectern because I don't want to suffer the court's wrath. How many of you feel even a little bit that based on, because some of you have read about the case, some of you have listened to some things about the case, some of you have seen things on TV, heard others discuss it. Is there anyone else that feels like, you know, I'm leaning, I hear you about the presumption of innocence. I know that's what the law says I'm supposed to do, but the way my mind operates is just a little bit different. That's fine. You're not going to get in trouble for that. My names aren't on my sheet. Ms. Parker? Okay. Do you feel that way about Mr. Adelson? Forgive me for seizing on something you said, but does anyone know what I might quarrel with about? Yes, Mr. King. Does he? All right. You know, these concepts, these ideals that we hold ourselves to as a society and hopefully individually, they only have meaning if each of you breathe life into them. So we could walk around kidding ourselves about these things unless we really believe them. So I'm hearing these things, but Ms. Brinkley, do you believe that Mr. Adelson coming into the room, if you really search yourself, do you feel like must have done it, must have been involved somehow?
Well, I can't give a yes or no to that because I haven't heard the case.
Okay.
Now, if I do become a jury and I hear the case, then I can make my, talk to the other jurors about it, and we go from there, but I can't answer that because I can't by looking at him, I can't say, well, he's guilty or he's not guilty.
Forget about looking at him.
Okay, if
Just
I
based on the fact that he's been arrested and charged.
I still can't say that he's guilty or not guilty.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. What can you say?
I have to listen to the case. If I become a juror, I have to listen to the case.
Now I'd ask you to take a look at him. What do you see over there? What is he now?
Well, I see a young man who's sitting in here, looking at the possible potential of George here. And,
It was a poorly articulated question. If you don't look across this room,
I can't say anything.
no, let me get my question out.
Okay, go ahead.
If you don't look across this room and say, I see an innocent man sitting there, I want you to raise your hand, please.
Are you talking
Talking to all of you now.
Oh, why? Oh, I can see.
How many, so, yes, Ms. Parker.
Apparently he was innocent to me. I haven't heard anything that would have been guilty.
Who looks across the room, though, and says he's been charged, arrested? I look across the room and I don't see an innocent man. I see someone that has got a whole bunch of problems ahead of him. Anyone feel that way a little bit? Sorry, I'm...
No, I believe
Okay. And how... How does it, have you experienced that at all in your life? Thank you for your candor, Ms. Moore. Is there anyone that disagrees with what Ms. Moore said? Anyone? This is the last time I'm going to ask it because I don't want to go through each and every one of you. But Mr. Fry, do you feel like there must be something to it because he's been charged, arrested? Do you believe that? All right. I don't think it's any bolt of lightning to any of you at this point. Judging by the camera to your left and my right, and as His Honor told you, that this case has received quite a bit of media attention. And this is totally fine if you feel that way. Any of you feel like you'd be a little bit reluctant to go back into the community, to go back to work, to face your friends, your significant other, anyone close to you, and say, you know what? I don't think the prosecutors met their burden, and I don't think that I could have found him guilty and vote not guilty if they don't meet their burden. Does anybody have even a little bit of reluctance there? That they would feel like, I don't want people to think I was part of a jury that acquitted Charlie Adelson? Mr. Jordan, would that be a concern to you?
No, I don't know.
All right. Who knows who on this panel knows someone that knows about this case? Okay. Mr. Brown. Okay. So I saw you, Dr. Rubino. I'm going to come to you in a moment. Who else, just by show of hands, is familiar with others that know about the case? So it's also Ms. Bell? All right. So starting with you, Mr. Brown, would you be reluctant if you found that the state didn't meet their burden to go back and face your significant other, anyone, and say, I quitted Charlie Adelson? Why not? How about you, Ms. Strong? All right. Ms. Bell? What about you, Mr. Fisher? You have friends in law enforcement, right? All right. Your friend, go ahead. Your friend, would you have any reluctance? Would you hesitate even a little bit if you felt like the prosecution didn't meet their burden to face your friends in law enforcement?
If they don't engage with the evidence, I stand behind whatever outcome I would come to. I wouldn't say either way because I feel like it or because I think it. If they don't have a convinced, if they don't show me the proof of
Does anyone disagree? Does anyone feel like there'd be too much pressure? Would they be reluctant? Anyone at all? Ms. Walker? Mr. Brazos? You were a juror before you were foreman, right? All right. You were kind of in charge of keeping the trains on the tracks, right? Making sure that people were able to say their piece. Fair enough? All right. There was a verdict in that case. And you feel like that experience would have any impact on you sitting as a juror in this case? Why not? Okay. Before I move on, Mr. King, anything to tell me? You, I don't know, we keep making eye contact. I figure I'd call on you now. There wasn't anything specific. You're confident that you could look across the room and not just when the trial starts, but through the trial? I mean, I'm not going to instruct you on the law. I wouldn't dare. His Honor is going to instruct you on the law. And if I'm wrong on it, don't hold it against Mr. Adelson. But I have an inkling I might be right on this part. What if you were to learn that the presumption of innocence is like a thread that you grab onto right now and you pull it all the way through the 2 or 3 weeks of this trial? In other words, that every time you look across the room, that you presume Mr. Adelson innocent. That's not an easy thing. You've heard of the expression innocent until proven guilty? Let me modify that. Innocent unless proven guilty. Until sounds like an eventuality. What's the difference between what I just said? Innocent until proven guilty versus innocent unless proven guilty, Ms. Spades. Okay, but I wanted Ms. Spates to answer it. That's all right. I looked in your direction. And what does unless mean? Okay. Can you appreciate the point I'm making? Does anyone disagree? All right. I'm going to move on to a different subject. I think that Ms. Williams mentioned it. How many of you, by a show of hands, have heard of people being exonerated for crimes that they did not commit? By a show of hands. And by my count, that's all of you except for one. That's all of you. Except for almost one. All right. We hear about these stories when? When do we hear about those stories, Mr. Conyers?
After the trial. After the trial.
After the trial. After what?
After years of incarceration.
All right. All right. So they're nice stories, right? But they aren't nice for the person that went through it. So I'd ask you, do you feel like, is there anyone that doesn't think they can keep that in mind throughout the trial? So in other words, once that happens, it's too late. That's how serious this is. Does anybody think, you know what, I'm going to have a difficult time as witness after witness comes in and testifies during the prosecution's case? I might have a tough time looking at Mr. Adelson and continuing to presume him innocent. Please, there's got to be someone amongst you, because we've had people come back and tell us that they've read about the case, and when you're hearing one side, it can have an effect on you, right? Does anyone think that they might have a difficult time continuing to remind themselves throughout that I have to presume him innocent? Unless. Anyone feel they would have a difficult time with that? Who haven't I called on? Can you show me? I called on everyone? Didn't feel like it. Who might have a difficult time with that? Ms. Brinkley, do you feel like you'd be able to do that? Will you be able to continually look over at Mr. Adelson throughout the trial, even as the prosecution brings in witness after witness, and continue to say, I hear you, but I have to view him as an innocent man until I hear the instructions on the law, and unless, after I deliberate with my fellow jurors, unless I find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt?
Once again, I have to listen to the case. I can't be innocent or guilty. When I come in here, I have to listen to the case. I'm not going to look at him and say he's innocent until proven guilty. I don't know. I have to listen to the case.
Fair enough. I appreciate your candor. Does anyone agree? That was as honest as you can get. She said, I can't look at him and presume him innocent. That's okay. That's fine. Who agrees with that? Who agrees that I'm not going to presume one way or another? I don't care what the law says. Anyone else agree with Ms. Brinkley? Mr. Fry? Okay. Does anyone agree even a little bit? Okay. How many of you have heard of Nancy Grace? All right. How many of you are a fan of her shows? Beyond? Okay. Who can you just keep your hands up just for a moment? How many of you have watched her shows? Ms. Gardner? Have you watched her shows? Okay. And what was her point of view, typically?
She's always very firm. Her beliefs are always very clear.
And what are those beliefs usually clear about?
I mean, it just depends on what's going on, what she's reporting.
Thank you. Ms. Strawn, what are her beliefs typically? How many of you agree that have seen her shows that that's how she sort of, so tell me, and this is fine if you feel this way, whether you find her entertaining or whether you agree with her, how many of you are a fan? A regular watcher? Okay. For the folks that work for the state, for a municipality, are there any of you that feel, and there were several of you, that either work for the state or have family members that do? Do any of you feel like some simpatico, if you will, some familiarity with the prosecution because they too work for the state? Who works for the state? Okay. So I'm going to start with Ms. Walker. Remind me again.
I was in justice for 31 years.
Okay. Different area.
It was all workers' compensation.
Okay. Any particular allegiance with prosecutors here because they too work for the state? Believe Ms. Gardner works for the state, yes? Okay. Remind me of where you work at the state again?
Agency Policy Administration.
Okay. And do you feel like when you look at the prosecutors, any bit of, we're all in the same gang kind of thing? Sure?
Yes.
Not a little bit?
No.
All right. Who else? Okay. Do you understand why this might be a concern for me, Dr. Rubino? Okay, why?
Because if we're inherently biasing ourselves towards a certain group, we might also bias ourselves towards their opinions.
Yes. Spoken like a true scientist. Well, preaching to the converted. I'm just a nerd for different things. Mr. Fry? Oh, sorry. Fry, Fisher, separated by a column. All right. Now you got that in my head.
No allegiances.
Okay. All right. Anyone feel that way that have family members that work for the state? So Dr. Rubino mentioned something that I'd like you all to consider. This notion of inherent bias. And it's something to think about because I have a little bit of ways to go. It's something to think about overnight. If there's anything that I asked you about that you reconsider to yourself, not on the internet, not to a friend or to no one but yourself, please let me know first thing in the morning. Had that happen where someone comes back the next day and says, I thought about it, and I kind of do think I might be starting off with Mr. Adelson a little behind, or I might have allegiance to the prosecutors because they work for the state. How many of you prior to today heard of the talented prosecutor, Ms. Kappelman? Okay. Mr. Brown? Okay. How would you heard of her? Oh, the baseball, Little League. Come on, I was looking for someone that. Okay. Had anyone else heard of Mrs. Kappelman before today? No? Okay. How many of you have had pleasant experiences with law enforcement? Okay. I'm going to start with Ms. Parker. Tell me about that.
Well, I used to be, president of the Broward County Managers Coalition, and we worked with the Broward County Sheriff's Department.
Was that on Federal Highway or on Sunrise Boulevard? Is that where you were?
Well,
Well, was it on Sunrise past Federal Highway?
it was on Deerfield, both between Deerfield and,
Okay.
but this has been many years back.
Okay.
The sheriff's department, would work with us in conjunction with whatever we were trying to address, our problems in the area, break-ins, robberies, evictions, a lot of different things. And they were always very helpful, and they'd come to the meetings and,
Okay. I appreciate you sharing that. Mr. King?
Just Deputy Eldridge, he's made us move the whole past day and a half pleasant.
Now, I should have known better than to ask the question without a specific caveat for Deputy Eldridge, because I too love the man. And I mean that, but before you met the fine deputy. So in other words, here's what I mean by it, maybe this will help me get a little more specific. Whether it was when you were pulled over and, the officer let you off, or whether it was because I know that there was a few people who had, homes were burglarized, or, you needed help with directions, whatever the case may be. How many of you walked away and said, that was a fine police officer? In any situation? Okay, all right, great. So tell me about that. Now I'm gonna get it right. Mr. Fisher?
I've had a few encounters while working.
In what capacity?
Either being, pulled over for like a tail light out or something like that, nothing serious or anything. I don't think I've ever had a real bad experience per se.
Okay.
To my recollection,
Who else? Mr. Braza? I don't want to talk about those. I only want to talk about the times where you walked away feeling like this person really helped me and made a difference in my life. Just by a show of hands. Now, all right, perfect. So, Ms. Strawn, tell us a little about that. You had a double who? Oh, double doozy. Okay. Were you conducting surveillance or just? Oh.
My son, that was the only time he got on the road. We were like,
All right.
so we're going to get something to eat. And when I was hurt, let's see how we something to do. We were going to get you out of the
Okay.
But but that would have really hurt.
Ms. Daigle, I think you raised your hand as well, or no?
Well, I mean, just
Now, I want to call you James Jordan, but it's Jordan James, right? All right. Mr. James, did I hear you right? Did you say your dad was a sheriff? At the Jacksonville Sheriff? And you're not raising your hand?
No, because, it always says every occupation is
Okay. So for the folks here that have had, I know that you raised your hand as well, Ms. Moore. Was it in relation to anything other than like a traffic stop? Oh, I'm sorry. I hate thinking about that part. So I'm going to put this question to Ms. Strawn and Ms. Moore. But I want you all to act like I'm asking you all right? But you were the two that mentioned, particular instances, you with the help with, the unfortunate event when somebody passes, and you with the double doozy. I expect there to be law enforcement that will take the stand here. And I know that my colleague on the other side asked you some version of this question, which was that how many of you would give them any more or less weight? I'm asking you, do you think in light of your positive experiences with law enforcement that, I know that Mr. Gosling was extremely candid about this, and he said, yeah, hold them to a higher standard, and I think that they're more credible than an ordinary witness in words or substance. Any of you think that? In other words, when a law enforcement officer takes a stand, that you look at them as being more credible, more believable, more reliable than another witness. How many of you feel that way? I know we already got you, Mr. Gosselin, Mr. Weaver. How many of you feel that way? No? Why not, Ms. Moore?
The reason why I said I wouldn't raise my hand is because I think you're an individual person and you have to look at people on an individual basis. And I know, I still have to see what they are. And so I don't, well, if I wouldn't be in a law enforcement, it would be different. These things that an example of who went up to the honor and holding him. You do need the person in some position and holding them high in God.
Okay. Does anyone, I know I have some points of view in the front row that may or may not be from someone that played for the Reds and then went to the Mariners and went to the Yankees. And from Mr., my son's a big fan. And from Mr. Gosling. Did I have that right? All right. I think you had a good season. Does anybody feel that, someone gets on the stand and they're wearing a uniform or they're part of the Leon County Sheriff's Office, that they must be more believable? All right. How many of you have heard of this notion of something called groupthink? All right, groupthink. Can can the good doctor explain?
If I recall, groupthink is the idea of people jumping on one person's interests and following up behind that. So lack of independent thinking, humans tend to conglomerate around ideas, is how we develop complete positions on a thing that can see itself over time.
Okay. Can you give me an example, Dr. Rubino, of how and when groupthink can be a dangerous thing?
I think anytime a person is in a position of leadership and they're trying to manipulate a crowd to black the individuals that they're thinking to assess a position, we've tried an example of when somebody is trying to move people in one direction. It sounds nefarious, but it can be as simple as your coach and you need to get your players all believe in the same mission. So it's kind of structured into leadership.
So let me, Dr. Rubino, thank you. I might reference you again when I need to articulate something better than I know I'm capable of. So, there couldn't have been a better explanation, I don't think. So what I'm getting at here is, how many of you think it's possible, or let me switch it, how many of you think it's impossible for a group of well-intentioned people to take the witness stand, all for one reason or another, believing one story, but they all got it wrong? Does anyone believe that's impossible? You follow my question? Who's confused about my question? Okay. Only one, that's not bad. So, what do you think I'm getting at, Ms. Williams? So in other words, it's too late. The hour is late and your attention blows my mind. The fact that you're all still making eye contact and with me. So let me just get right to the point on this question. How many of you think it's impossible for one after another, witness after witness after witness to come in here and all tell you a story that points in their minds to this man's guilt? Do you think it's impossible for that to happen and then for all to be wrong? Well, why not, Dr. Rubino? Why is it possible that they're all telling the same story or have a certain point of view, and yet they could all be wrong?
We could spend a lot of time talking to each other. They could have shared values, they could have shared a lot of information back and forth between each other. We could have a shared perspective on the world that assumes a certain level of guilt or innocence.
Thank you. Ms. Strawn, or let me go to Mr. Fisher.
The false memory fallacy.
Okay, tell us what the false memory fallacy is.
False memory is basically you're asking somebody if the perpetrator, what shirt were they wearing? Did they say a green shirt? And then later on say, what about the red shirt that they wear? And you can slightly alter the way they insult the point where they say, yeah, we were wearing a red shirt.
How many of you say, you know what, Dubin's crazy? No way that this happened. No way that so many people all think the same thing and have it all wrong. Do any of you feel that way? I know Mr. Gosling raised his hand earlier. Do any of you think that? Think that's possible? You all leave open the possibility that they all think a certain way, whether it's groupthink or the false memory fallacy, and they just got it wrong. Anyone disagree with that? All right, yes.
Help me understand.
Yes, sure, if I can, I'll try.
So if there's 12 people that saying the same thing and agreeing on the same thing, so, oh my God. So if there's 12 people that is saying the same thing and they saying that he's guilty, you saying, your question is to us, do we believe the 12?
No, I'm asking something different,
Okay,
all right? And here's, I'm gonna give you a hypothetical that doesn't involve a crime.
okay.
I'm not gonna make anybody the perpetrator or my
Right,
co-conspirator.
okay.
All right? All right, if 10 people get up here and say, I see a microphone in that, if 12 people get on the stand and say, I'm looking at Josh Dubin and he is not holding a microphone in his hand. But what do you see?
They're holding the microphone.
You just exercised free will, didn't you? You're not gonna believe the 12 people, you're gonna believe what
What
you
I
said.
see, yes.
That's what I'm trying to say,
Okay.
all right? Does anyone feel like, no, I mean, Mr. Weaver points it out, they may know a little bit better, they were trained to be at this elite level. You're all the ones that are gonna be here deciding Mr. Adelson's fate. Not the witnesses, not Mr. Rashbaum, not Ms. Myers, not the prosecutors, you. You're the ones. Is anyone uncomfortable with that? At all? It's a big responsibility. Mr. King, are you comfortable with that? Anyone the slightest bit uncomfortable with that? Do you understand where I was coming from now? All right. I have one last question for the end of the day, and I cannot thank you enough for your attention to this. Patience. How many of you love to go to the dentist? Love it.
I love my dentist.
Yeah,
Okay.
my-
Please, by a show of hands, who loves their dentist?
I love the feeling of clean teeth.
Yeah,
You loved your dentist, but you don't like to go. All right. All right.
Lifelong dental trauma. My dentist is the best person on the planet.
Right.
I love the feeling when I reach them.
All right. Who else? Okay. How many of you are like my 3 children? Well, at least 2 of them. How many of you say, you know what? I cannot stand the dentist. I hate going there. By a show of hands. Okay. Can you all put them up high so my colleagues can? All right. Because I'm going to ask you all. Mr. You can put your hand down now. Sorry. Mr. Adelson is a dentist. Do any of you feel, we were looking across the room a lot. Those were my hypotheticals, right? Do any of you feel that, these dentists, they cause me anxiety, it's painful, I don't like it, and therefore that will somehow transfer, even if it's a little bit. Even if you're like, oh, a dentist on top of it all. Does anyone feel that way? Mr. King, your hand flew up first. What, that the practice of dentistry is painful to humans, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm the one responsible for showing my teeth.
Do any of you have such negative feelings about dentists or had a negative experience about dentists that you might view Mr. Adelson negatively? Have any of you ever read anything negative about dentists? Ms. Parker, we haven't chatted in
I don't feel strongly, either or, if I dislike the dentist or I don't like the dentist, or I like the dentist. If I have to go to the dentist, I gotta go to the dentist and get it done, get rid of it.
Ms. Spates, how's the dentist for you? Okay. I'm not going to belabor the point. I just wanted, had it happen before where someone's like, they're that occupation. I just got a negative vibration, and that's that. All right. No one feels that way? All right. I said it was my last question, but I am in his honor's domain, so to speak. So I see that we're going to 6:15. I have 3 more minutes. Is it all right if I squeeze in a few more?
Well, you're going to be on a hard count, but 6:15 it is. Go ahead.
I'm gonna pick the one that causes me to have a soft landing. How many of you feel that everybody deals with death the same way? Okay. Who here has an expectation about how someone should act when they hear that a family member has passed away? How many of you have experienced the passing of a family member and one of your other family members doesn't cry?
Yeah.
Okay. How many of you found that odd? How many of you found it odd, weird? How many of you have had the experience when a family member passes away and the other family member gets right back to their normal routine?
Everybody handles their grief.
Okay. What about funerals and memorial services? Is anyone here, if you hear that Mr. Adelson did not attend the funeral or memorial service of the victim, how many of you are going to say, that's suspicious to me?
No.
Any of you? Why not, Mr. Jordan?
I mean, I know me personally, I don't like funerals, so if I can skip out on
Even if it's a family member?
someone I'm not close to,
I
Who disagrees and says, you know what, I'm always going because it's the respectful thing to do? It's fine if you feel that way.
I'll do that for direct families, but, it's
I'm going to pick up on this tomorrow. Ms. Brinkley, you sat up in your seat and you're
Yeah,
inching closer.
I didn't go to my grandmother's funeral, and I didn't care what the rest of it had to say about it.
Why not?
Because I wanted to remember her the last time we had a conversation. I don't have no knowledge of her being in a casket. And there were other family members that, that's a shame, you shouldn't have done that, she raised you, look, I don't care. I want to remember her the last time we spoke.
All right, now I'm going to let go of the mic. It's at 6:15. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, I appreciate you very much, and I'll be speaking with you again bright and early.
Now the attorneys can approach. Give me a moment, everyone. You'll be dismissed in a moment, but the attorneys can approach.